Thank you so much. Perfect. So yesterday we seen the prerequisites required, design principle, design pattern, what is framework, what is paradigm, convention over configuration, bill of materials. All these are all important prerequisites concept to start the Spring Boot learning. So this is what we discussed yesterday, and we even have discussed like the course content of the Spring Boot. We started discussing the course content of the Spring Boot. So overview, features of Spring Boot 3.0 released to the market, how many ways we can create a Spring Boot project, then understanding the Spring Boot project, whether it is web project or non-web project. Then understanding the application types, web application versus non-web application. Then application packaging internals, fat jar versus the lightweight jar. Then executable nature of the Spring Boot packaging. And then Spring Boot auto configuration, which is very, very important. Again, here we see the concept of convention over configuration it is using. Then altering the Spring Boot configurations, default configurations, how we can alter, and can we deploy the Spring Boot application to external application servers, and understanding the Hikari CP connection pooling. Then concept of the profiles. Here we will see the YAML file. What is YAML file? How to write the YAML files? The benefits of the YAML file over the property file. Right? First, we'll see the what is profile. What is Marvin profiles in traditional web applications. Then conditional annotations introduced in Spring Core 4.x we'll discuss. Then we'll see the conditionally creating beans with profiles. So a lot of concepts we'll discuss here around the profiles. Then we'll implement the data access layer. Again, I'll discuss about this actually. If we can take any application, enterprise application, that enterprise application will have the minimum 3 layers or 3 tiers. So repository layer, service layer, controller layer. Like this, we have the minimum 3 layers or tiers. So here we will discuss about the Spring Data JPA. For that, we will create the data access layer as shown here. Here we'll discuss about the Spring Data JPA and how we can use Spring Data JPA. Spring Boot 3.x onwards, it is using the Java Enterprise Edition 9. So it will support the it will support the Jakarta annotations. So how the Spring Data JPA works with the Spring Boot 3.x. First of all, what is Spring Data? What is Data JPA? All these things we will see. I'll also explain the Hibernate architecture, components of Hibernate, how Hibernate will works. So I'll explain, and the relation, what is the relation between Data JPA and then Hibernate we will see. Then we'll implement the repository for our web application. Yesterday, if you can see, we thought of developing, right? As part of this course, we will develop one web application with a time leaf as the UI, Spring Web MVC, and then Spring Data JPA we will use. If this is the application structure, layered structure, here Data JPA we will use. One moment. Sorry guys. So here we will use the Data JPA, and here we will use the Data JPA. Then here we will use the transaction management. exception handling. And here we will use the Spring Web MVC. And we'll also see about the unit testing, integration testing, validations, entities, exception handling, controller advices. All these concepts will apply on the web application that we're gonna build. Again, I'll explain about what is enterprise web application, what is entire architecture, then types of the web application architectures. We'll discuss them going forward. But this is what the layer structure we will implement, and then each and every layer will discuss the concepts of the Spring Boot. Then implementing service layer. In service layer, we will apply the transactions. So this is the service layer. Here we will apply the transactions. So here we will learn in depth of the transactions here. Transaction support in Spring Boot. So basically before Spring Boot, how the transaction management can be handled in Spring. Then how the transactions can be supported in Spring Boot. Then we will see how many types of the transactions we have. Local transaction versus global transactions. Transaction rollbacks, transaction definition interface, transaction attributes. Lot of things about the transactions we'll discuss. And finally, we'll implement the transactions. So like this, you can see, I believe we have used the transactions, not this one. So these are all microservices, not this one. Let me showcase you another Shopify platform brownfield. So let me open that application. I can showcase how we applied the transactions there and all. So now coming to this layer is completed. Here data JPA we have used. Here transaction management we have used. And then coming to this controller layer, implementing the controller layer. So in controller layer, we'll build the Spring REST controller components using Spring Boot. And also we'll build the web components, web MVC components using the Spring Boot. Here we will implement. So how to implement the web MVC, how to implement the RESTful services, guidelines of the REST services, principles of REST services. Again, web application, how we can build the web application. All these things we can see there. Now, just look at this one, redesigned application. So how the transactions we have used on the service layer. So go to the service IMPL. I believe, yes, for some reason I disabled, maybe to test something, but see this. Here we have applied the transactional annotation. And also we have applied the transactional annotations on the methods, business methods. So due to some reason, maybe, yeah, here you can see. So when the transaction need to be rolled back and how, when the transaction need to be propagate. So we'll implement like this. Then coming to this controller layer. So in controller layer, you can see this. This is the controller layer. So like this, we'll implement the web MVC controller. So this is the web MVC controller for the customer. Similarly, we can also do for the home controller, orders controller, and other business management. So we will see the 2 to 3 modules and we will implement the 2 to 3 modules here. 1 minute. Yeah. So we'll implement the 2 to 3 modules here. Fine. We'll implement the 2 to 3 modules here, meaning in this web layer, controller layer is also called as web layer. So in this web layer, we will implement the Spring Web MVC concepts we'll implement 2 to 3 modules of our application, like maybe the categories module, customer management module, and then the products module. So these 3 modules we'll implement here. Then if you can see the application.yml file here. So we'll use the logging and we'll use the data sources management. We'll use the profiles management. See, in the course content, you have seen the profiles management, isn't it? And also we'll handle the validations. In validations, we'll write our custom validations. So we'll address the pagination. Lot of concepts we'll achieve on this web application. And finally, what we'll do, we'll see how we can do the testing, unit testing. So testing of WebMVC controllers, you can see here, integration testing. And then you can see the testing of the REST controllers and unit testing with Marketo. So here we'll do the unit testing with the Marketo. Then logging. So log management, controller components, service components will log, will log, and then we will generate a log file. We will rotate the log file for every 24 hours, or if it is meeting a certain size, then we will rotate the log file. How the log will be managed in Spring Boot, what is the log back. So all these things, how the logging mechanism will be supported in Spring Boot, all these things we'll discuss here. Then we will discuss about the production grade metrics. So we'll have the Spring Boot admin dashboard, which will be helpful a lot for us to monitor the health of the application. For that, we'll implement the Spring Boot admin dashboard. And in that dashboard, we'll see the health of the application that we're going to build. So in actuators, we'll see micrometer, very, very important concept. This micrometer concept was already earlier also there, but Spring Boot 3.x used this micrometer extensively. So we need to study separately about this. So production grade metrics we can see on admin dashboard for our application. Then we'll see the Spring Boot security. So if we can see this one, how we applied the security. So Spring security, how we have applied. So probably let me go to commons, not commons, model security. Yes, you can see here. So how we have taken this security configuration, right? So what is this password encoder? What is this authentication manager builder? What is this HTTP security object? And how we have to define this form login, login page redirections, logout, exceptions, and all. How we can apply the security is what we will see. Meaning Spring security implementation with the Spring Boot. Then we will see how we can connect to MongoDB. That means we will use our database as MySQL, but still how we can connect it to MongoDB. So primary database, secondary database concept we will use. So MongoDB as secondary database, primary database, and then secondary database. At a time, 2 databases we can use. How we can use is what we'll discuss. Then how we can use the Redis cache in Spring Boot for storing the data like tokens, database data, or whatever it is for storing something. How we can use this Redis cache is what we will see. Then batching and scheduling we'll discuss. For example, if you want to migrate the users from one system to our system, let's say we have the customers who are also the customers of the Amazon, or let's say our Shopify platform have the customers who are also the customers of Reliance. So we tie up some business with the Reliance. The Reliance guys will give us the customer data every day. Let's say every day, 12 a.m. they will send the data to our endpoint, our application. Then our application need to get that data and then schedule it to be create in our database. So assume huge data if we will get, then how we can save into the DB. So for that reason, Spring Batch and then Spring scheduling will help us to do. Then I'll explain how to integrate the Spring Boot project with Apache Kafka and then Dockerizing the Spring Boot application. Then Spring Boot application integration with this ELK stack. Finally, we will see the Graal VM. Very, very important. Graal VM support. Very, very important, which is introduced in this Spring Boot 3.x. Graal VM support is Graal VM support has been given in Spring Boot 3.x. When Spring Boot 3 will use this Graal VM for the faster execution of the applications. So what is this Graal VM and how the Spring Boot will execute or how it will use the Graal VM? We'll discuss. So this is about the course content from the Spring Boot point of view. So this entire Spring Boot execution, learning and all will take 45 days. Complete Spring Boot will take 45 days. Okay, so complete Spring Boot will take 45 days, excluding Spring Core. I'm not considering the Spring Core. Spring Core, if you want me to tell, then that will take 15 days. So by excluding the Spring Core, only Spring Boot 3.x will take 45 days. Okay, so this is from the Spring Core, Spring Boot 3.x course content point of view. Now let's go and then see the microservices course content. One moment, guys. Let me plug in my charger. Yeah. Any questions you have from this Spring Boot course content? Do you have any questions to ask me from this course content? Oh, 6 messages I got. Okay, sir, is batching and scheduling same as Spring Batch? Correct. That's true. Spring Batch, but how we can use that in the Spring Boot is what we're going to discuss. So Karan Sharma, 100 days for whole course. Yeah, target is 75 days. You guys can add extra 25 days. I'll maximum finish in 75 days only. If in case the course content is more, of course, course content is however is more, but in our execution, if any delays happened, maximum additional 25 days you can consider. So do we start from Spring Core? So from scratch, we're going to start? Yes. Most of the folks were said they don't know the Spring Core. So we will start from the Spring Core and in depth of the Spring Core I'll cover. So we'll start from the Spring Core. So coming to the batch timings, this batch is going to be start at 9 a.m. but not 9 p.m. Not at this moment. After the Spring Core is completed, let us start at 9 p.m. Okay, the demos are happening from 8 p.m. IST to 9 p.m. IST. But once the Spring Core concept is also, we will discuss from 8 p.m. IST to 9 p.m. IST. Once the Spring Core is completed, then when the Spring Boot will start, then we will start it at 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Or else Spring Boot entire we can start at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Microservices onwards, we can go to 9 p.m. I'll tell you. But the Spring Core, first Spring Core will target to complete 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, any more questions from the Spring Core sorry, Spring Boot course content. Okay, the fee for the Spring Boot microservices, meaning this course, the fee is 8,000. Yesterday they were pinged you 12,000 by mistaken, but it is 8,000, not 12,000. Okay, now let us go and then see the microservices content. Yeah, so coming to the microservices content, what we're going to discuss. So we're going to discuss what is this domain-driven design with the bounded context. If we can see our prerequisite session, I might have already written this domain-driven design. Somewhere, yes, you can see DDD, domain-driven design. So when we think about the microservices architecture, we have to think about the two words, greenfield, brownfield. Greenfield microservices, brownfield microservices. If it is greenfield, no problem. No need to know about this DDD. But if it is brownfield, we have to know about this DDD with the bounded context. So then we will see the monolithic applications and challenges in monolithic applications. Monolithic application meaning whatever the application just now I have shown you now. This is called as the monolithic application. So this monolithic application, why we call it as monolithic application and all we'll discuss. So, but this is called as monolithic application. Why we call it as monolithic, I'll discuss when time comes. So this monolithic application will convert into microservices. Then we will see the challenges in monolithic application. What is the need of converting it to microservices? Meaning what is the need of breaking down into microservices is what we will see. Next, microservices architecture, honeycomb analogy. Very, very important concept to understand the microservices architecture, honeycomb analogy. We all know the honeycomb, right? Hexagonal architecture, it will follow. So honeycomb analogy is what we will use as a reference architecture to understand the microservices architecture. Then we will see the advantages of the microservices architecture. We will learn about the microservices principles. And then we will see the microservices characteristics. Very, very important. Then we will see the microservices patterns to migrate the existing application to the microservices architecture. Migration of monolithic application to microservices architecture. Meaning converting. If you can see the application, whatever I have shown you, right, that is called as monolithic. So that application we will convert into the microservices. How? On what basis we will convert? So do we have to follow any standards, principles, suggestions, guidelines? Yes. You can see here. These are all what the microservices. So how this application, for example, you can see here, how this application, category, customer, see this. So customer, category, customer, brand, brands, category, customer meaning user management, then product, then user is user management, then shipment service, then order is there, order service. What did you observe now? What are you observing now? These are all separate projects. But here, these are all modules in one project. So this will convert to this. This we will convert to this. How we can convert? What are the advantages that we will get if we do the conversion? Right? So how we can maintain all these microservices if we do the conversion successfully? So those are all we will discuss. One moment, guys. Just give a moment. One moment. Fine. So how we can convert into this microservices architecture? So what are the principles, rules we need to follow? So those are all we will discuss in this migration. So coming to this microservices patterns, so we have the various patterns. So this is the microservices patterns content. So we have these many patterns: decomposition pattern, integration patterns, database patterns, event-driven pattern, observability pattern, cross-cutting, resilience 4J. So these 7 patterns are very, very important for us to understand before we are going into the microservices conversion. So decomposition pattern, integration pattern, database pattern, event-driven patterns, observability patterns, cross-cutting concerns, resilience 4J pattern. So these 7 patterns, very, very important for us to migrate the existing application. That means migrating this application. Migrating this application to this application. So migrate from this monolithic to this microservices architecture. We require to know at least 2 patterns first. Then we will apply the rest of the patterns once we migrate it to the microservices architecture. So that is what we'll discuss here. Then problems in migrating to microservices. Shared DB. What is the communication style? Synchronous communication or asynchronous communication? So what is the microservices communication style? One microservice may be talked to another microservice. So what is their communication style? For example, did you observe the payment gateways? Let's say while you are purchasing anything in Amazon or somewhere, when you are purchasing anything, when your payment gateway triggers, right? Once the payment is success, then only you will move ahead. Your order will be confirmed. Otherwise, your order won't be confirmed. It will be wait for the confirmation from the payment gateway. That is called what? Synchronous communication. Then when to go for asynchronous communication? The benefits of synchronous versus asynchronous we'll discuss here. Then microservices we are using, right? So microservices we are building, right? So single VM or shared JVM. What kind of JVM? Right now you can see my machine is a single JVM. I have only one JVM in my machine. On single JVM, these microservices are running now. What is the problem? What is the concept of noisy neighbor problem? So there's a problem called noisy neighbor. So what is that noisy neighbor problem? Solution for that is what we'll discuss. Finally, features of microservices. Then microservices implementation using Spring Boot 3.x. Then securing microservices using OAuth 2.0 specification and OpenID protocol. OAuth 2.0 and OpenID. So I believe I have used OAuth 2.0. Yeah. And then we will use the JWT OAuth 2.0 with OpenID. With OpenID. And JWT, how we can build the JWT store, JWT token generation logics and all. Then we will see the microservices framework and data management patterns, Oxen framework, data management patterns, event sourcing, CQRS, Saga patterns, advantages of event sourcing and CQRS, distributed transactions in microservices using Saga, Dockerizing the microservices, deploying the microservices to AWS, and integrating the microservices to microservices with the React.js. So these are all what we'll discuss. This is what the Spring, this is what the microservices course content. Okay, so I believe you got to know, right, what we will cover in microservices. Any questions from this microservices course content? Any questions? Any suggestions? Any questions? Great. Then we'll go for what once after this microservices we build, right? So this is what the microservices we built. So once this is built, we need an ecosystem to manage them. For that reason, we'll go for this Spring Cloud. So in Spring Cloud, what we will see? Spring Cloud overview, externalizing the configurations using the config server. Maybe you don't know all these at this time, but just look at the course content. Discovery server, resiliency in microservices. So here, Hystrix is no more. So these resiliency we are handling in some other way. So these are all no more actually. So these are all no more because we are handling it in some other way. I have shown you now here resilience 4J. So using resilience 4J, we will achieve this resilience in microservices. So no more support for the Hystrix. Hystrix support was removed by the Spring Cloud. So API gateway, Joule proxy and all. Again, we are not using the Joule proxy. We are using the Spring Cloud gateway. So this is also now we are not using. We are using what? Spring Cloud gateway. You can see here, cross-cutting, not cross-cutting, integration patterns. So here integration pattern, we will use the Spring Cloud gateway. So no more Joule API gateway. Next, microservices communication, Fin client, client-side load balancer using the ribbon. Then microservices tracing, sleuth, and then Jipkin. From the Spring Boot 3.x onwards, sleuth is no more. In place of it, micrometer is given. So micrometer we will use. So that micrometer you have heard somewhere, right? Where you have heard it? In the Spring Boot course content, I have mentioned here, production grade metrics. There I have mentioned micrometer. So this micrometer is extensively using by this, Spring Boot 3.x to trace the microservices. So this is what an ecosystem, to build the ecosystem to manage the microservices, we will use the Spring Cloud content. I believe it is too hard for you to understand now all these things, but maybe you will have some thought in your mind, right? Are we covering this? Are we covering that? That is the reason I'm just showing this content. Then Spring Security. So this is the course content of the Spring Security. So what is the security audit report? Understanding the vulnerabilities. Then data transmission, threat and prevention, TSL and then SSL understanding. User management and then role management, password management, encryptions, encoding, understanding the Spring Security Framework components called authentication providers, filters in Spring Security, then WSO2 Identity Server as a IAM we will use, OAuth OpenID Connect and OIDC we will use, OAuth 2 with JWT, protecting microservices with OAuth 2, role-based access control, and attribute-based access control, method level security. Method level security meaning you might have seen here. Method level security might have used. Let me go to this service AMPL. Somewhere we have used here the method level permissions, meaning we have used. I'll showcase. I think is it here or another project? I'm not sure, but somewhere we have used the method level permissions. Okay, probably not here. So when time comes, I'll showcase. But method level permissions, this is also called as the permission-based access control or attribute-based access control, PBAC or RBAC, we can say. Then multi-factor authentication, how we can integrate the OTPs and all, handling security at gateway, and distributed cache reddies, and microservices communication, token distribution, token validation. So these are all the concepts we'll discuss in the Spring Security, meaning Spring Security implementation or Spring Security in Spring Boot web applications, protecting the web applications developed using the Spring Boot 3.x and microservices developed using Spring Boot 3.x. So protecting the web application and microservices developed using the Spring Boot 3.x. For that, we will use the Spring Security 6.x. Spring Security 6.x. Finally, this is what the Docker course content. Okay, so how we can Dockerize all these microservices. You can see now every microservices here have one Docker file. See this authentication service, branch service, and then category service. You can see the gateway. Everywhere you can see the Docker file. Comments not required. Order saga. For order saga shipment, we have not taken. Again, you can see it for the registry Docker file. And then user management service also have the Docker file. So all the microservices, at least 2 to 3 microservices we will build. So how we can Dockerize it. Before Dockerizing, we have to understand the concept of cloud native. This is one. Cloud native, how we can achieve the cloud native applications building using this containerization technique is what we will see. So that's all from entire course content. I believe you might now got an idea. I'm pretty sure once you have done with this course, you can attend for the interviews from the range of the 0 to 6+ years. 5+ years compulsory you can attend. 6+ years also you can put and then attend. So that much of the depth we go. And if you practice well and then follow me properly, then it will be helpful for you, meaning any kind of interview you can crack. So once after all these implementations are done, meaning the course is completed or going to be complete, then I will give you the one interview preparation book at the free of cost. Just that book follow that book. Almost all the concepts are the important questions, interview questions I will cover during the course running, meaning the classes running. But if you follow that book as well, in addition to the questions, whatever we discussed in the classroom, lot of realistical questions, real-time questions, whatever asking also you came to know. So you prepare that book thoroughly, then go for interview. I am sure you can crack any interview on the Spring Boot microservices architecture. So that's all from my side, guys, for today. Again, no class tomorrow. Monday onwards, let us start Spring Core Demo 3. Spring Core, let us start from Monday onwards. Any questions for me on this course content, timings, course execution, duration? Anything you can ask me. Any questions?
I have one doubt, sir. So
Yeah,
before
correct.
starting core, are there any expectation from your side that the student should revise or no?
You mean prerequisites to be come up, meaning with the prerequisites?
Yeah, just any specific topics you want us to revise before starting Spring Core.
That's true. That's what. So most of the guys say they don't know the Spring Core, but it would be really great if you can come up with the Java 8 features brush up. Come up with the Java 8 features brush up. That is good enough for me. Okay, Java 8 features. Just brush up the Java 8 features and then come. That's good enough.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, I joined it. So a total time duration is 75 days. So it's a whole course time duration, or like it's only Spring Boot course
No,
time
no.
durations?
Whole course is 75 days. In the whole course 75 days, don't consider the Spring Core. Spring Core is 15 days. Just remove that.
Okay, okay.
Then Spring.
And fees will be 8,000 for whole course, na?
Correct. Okay, so that's. Go ahead, please. Any questions? Fine. Great, guys. No class tomorrow. Again, the class will be resumed from Monday onwards at the same time, 8 p.m. IST. Any questions, anything else? You can reach out to DURGASOFT team. They will redirect it to me. I'll get in touch with you. Thanks a lot. Stopping the screen share for now, and then see you on Monday. Thanks a lot.